Harry's wife. The ex she'd rather stay hidden. Most people have exes at some juncture. Most people have more than one romantic partner. Of course, narcissists tend to have a lot of romantic partners because of the frequency by which we draw people in, interact with them romantically, perhaps popping them on the shelf, taking them off the shelf, putting them on the shelf, taking them off the shelf repeatedly, maybe utilizing dirty little secrets, or if they become the intimate partner, primary source. We keep hold of them, we devalue them, and then we may disengage from them, or sometimes they escape. That's the rarest outcome. Or we have the roller coaster situation of devaluation and then idealization again. The push and pull that many of you are familiar with. Harry's wife is no different. She has a number of blasts from the past, if you will. And it is interesting to go back a number of years to bring up the past for her, so to speak, by looking at an article that was written by Richard Kay back in 2018 about a particular boyfriend that Harry's wife had. And the individual was described as the boyfriend Harry's wife would rather forget, how a 22-year-old Harry's wife-to-be dated an award-winning porn star among a host of other young suitors. The article states as follows: for any girl on the eve of her wedding, it would be a shattering blow, from which recovery would be painful. For Harry's wife, 8 days before she marries Prince Harry in front of the Queen and the royal family, and not forgetting a global TV audience of millions, the agony must be even more acute. Yesterday, she awoke to learn details that emerged of a gallery of men she is said to have dated, all of whose identities, until now, she had managed to keep hidden. Now, why might it be that they are kept hidden? Well, of course, many people, they will move on from their relationships. Of course they do. It's over. There's no need to bring that relationship back up. But for the narcissist, when that individual is not being interacted with, they essentially shuffle off the board, and it's as if they do not exist. And they only come back into being if, for instance, they get in contact with us, or naturally we happen to think about them, or we're reminded of them somehow. But in effect, you cease to exist as a consequence of shuffling off the board when we no longer interact with you. And of course, that suits the narcissist to be the case because you're not providing any function to the narcissist, and therefore it's appropriate to allow you to go off to one side. However, of course, it's also the case for somebody like Harry's wife that she's portrayed herself as somebody who is suitable to marry a prince, which means portraying a particular outlook to him and the world. And of course, having been involved with an individual who's a porn star is not exactly deemed to be a good look for royalty. The article continues by explaining, but for the presence of one individual, their identity might have barely caused a ripple. After all, if a woman of 36 hadn't had a boyfriend or two, people might have wondered what on earth was going wrong with her. Yet, amid the chiselled ex-actors and sports stars, who are reportedly former beaux, the figure of Simon Rex stands out. Posing languidly, stretched out on a naked bearskin rug, an unlit cigarette dangling from his mouth, and with only a puppy to hide his modesty, he seems an unlikely suitor in the life of the poised young woman who next week, at the time, will become Her Royal Highness and daughter-in-law to the Prince of Wales. While the photo alone must be embarrassing enough, it is the backstory of the model-turned-actor who made his name in the Scary Movie franchise that really adds to her humiliation. For Rex, born Simon Rex Cutright, and now a 43-year-old comedian and rapper using the name Dirt Nasty, is a former star of adult films, the Hollywood euphemism for porn movies. His first 3 films were aimed at the gay market. Indeed, he claims to have won an award for Best Gay Solo Video in 1997. Rex uses the reclining naked photograph on his Twitter homepage, where he also likes to post crude jokes. In a reference to engagement rings he wrote the other day, "The bigger the diamond, the smaller the dick." Elsewhere, there is a picture of him posing in a Coca-Cola costume, carrying the caption, "I think I have a Coke problem." Oh, regular wit, this fellow, isn't he? All in all, he seems the unlikeliest of romances for Harry's wife, but according to the Sun newspaper, the two enjoyed a date in 2004 when Harry's wife was 22 and taking her very first steps as a professional actress with walk-on parts in daytime television. They are said to have met on the set of a long-forgotten US sitcom called Cuts, where they both had roles in the same episode. He was already a successful model, appearing in ads for Calvin Klein, Versace and Levi's, while Harry's wife was still a year away from her first regular money role as a briefcase girl, holding up a case full of cash on game show Deal or No Deal. Of his past as a porn star, he was 18 and 19 when he made the films, he says it was to pay the bills. "I went there and did that shit," he said in a 2014 interview. "It was just enough to pay the rent at the time. I was living in the moment." He added, in hindsight, it wasn't the best move. For Harry's wife, Rex's moment of regret will barely register. Instead, any lingering hope she may have had that her past life would remain off limits as she completes her transformation from Hollywood starlet to royal princess must surely now have vanished. If it's any comfort, the royal family will scarcely raise an eyebrow at the revelations. As one figure close to the royals told me, "It's a horrid little betrayal, but it won't damage her reputation. She's not a virginal bride like Diana, who was only just out of her teens when she married Charles, but a mature woman of experience with one failed marriage behind her." The disclosures have come from Ninaki Priddy, once an inseparable friend of Harry's wife to whom she had been like a sister, but their relationship is long over. Since Harry's wife's engagement to Harry, she has spilled just about every intimate bean of their 30-year friendship. And this, of course, is always the risk that a narcissist faces, that as a consequence of devaluing certain people within the fuel matrix, they may well hold the receipts, as they say. It was Miss Priddy, you may recall, who revealed to royal biographer Andrew Morton that Harry's wife was always fascinated by the royal family. She wants to be Princess Diana Mark II. Yet what emerges from these revelations is a picture of Harry's wife, who, as a young woman, was not quite the confident and sophisticated figure whom Harry fell in love with. Harry's wife was vulnerable, and as likely as any other 20-something to chance her luck in the dating stakes. Until now it had been thought that for all her beauty, Harry's wife had been linked to only a handful of men, apart from her former husband, film producer Trevor Engelson, and the Canadian chef who replaced him in her affections. There had been the boy with whom she'd shared a first kiss, a high school sweetheart and a couple of others, non-serious. But now we learn that she had a dating Bible called The Rules, a self-help book aimed at women who want marriage in the shortest time possible. Of course, how fitting for a narcissist as a means to assert control over somebody by getting married as quickly as possible. According to this, Harry's wife studied the book, an instant bestseller when it came out in the mid-90s, so thoroughly she was able to recite passages off by heart. According to Ms. Priddy, Harry's wife used to quote the rules all the time and really put into practice with a number of her boyfriends. She was never without a boyfriend for more than 2 or 3 months. This shows the almost seamless transition from various intimate partner primary sources, something that's often seen with narcissists, of course, and was always striving to have someone by her side. She liked the idea of being part of a team and having a domestic life, i.e., of course, her narcissism was guiding her to ensure that she had somebody to whom she would be linked for the purposes of asserting control and drawing the prime aims from. Ms. Priddy adds, any relationship that she was in, there was always an element of marriage in the back of her mind. Harry's wife, she says, would quickly be thinking about what the relationship would be like in 10 years' time. That surely cannot have been the case with porn star Rex. But what are the other figures she has now been linked to? Unsurprisingly, some cover the period when she was away from home for the first time and a student at Northwestern University in Chicago. Sean Zakin was an actor and screenwriter with whom she enjoyed a 6-month romance in 2003. Both had attended Northwestern and had ambitions to act. Sean, now 38, and who played a waiter in an episode of Sex and the City, would rehearse his audition lines with her. According to The Sun, they split up because he would not make the commitment she wanted. His family are well off with a home in the Hamptons, and he had a good connections in Hollywood, a source told the newspaper. She liked that lifestyle, residual benefits, character trait acquisition. Both were demanding of each other, claims the source, resulting in passionate rows in public. Ignition of heated fury. She really pursued him because she saw a future with him. She was broken-hearted by their split. How interesting that Zakin, now a comedy writer, penned a show last year about a fairy tale Prince Charming in modern-day Los Angeles. After Zakin, Harry's wife is said to have dated another actor and writer called Brett Ryland. They were together for 5 months, but he was said not to possess the kind of bravado or high profile that she was looking for. It would appear that the character traits were not good with that one. According to a friend, Brett, who lives in Los Angeles, adored Harry's wife. He was constantly trying to shower her with love, and she enjoyed the attention, fuel, but she seemed to be in it more for the affirmation. They are said to have stayed good friends. During her first year at university, Harry's wife went out with a strapping 6'5" basketball star, Steve Laporte. Her college friends were impressed that she had snared a hottie. The friend said she was very proud of having landed this handsome guy and happy to share photos of him. Triangulation. She spoke of how broad and beautiful his chest was. Compliments, flattery. Steve was the star of the basketball team. She hadn't ever dated someone like that. Then, after Laporte, she is said to have had a 9-month romance with a wealthy fellow student. He's not named, though the newspaper reports she was very much in love with him, but it was a tempestuous relationship. Harry's wife was said to have been taken by his status because his family were wealthy diplomats. Character trait acquisition. During her university years, Harry's wife did work experience as an intern at the US Embassy in Buenos Aires. In 2002, she was said to have caught the eye of a wealthy Argentine businessman. According to the newspaper, the encounter was something of a liberation for her. She was off in Argentina and had this little adventure on the quiet. Interestingly, Harry's wife was also linked to another American who worked at the embassy, or at least those are the rumours in the Argentine capital. Looking back, it does seem that these men were little more than footfalls in her romantic history. By 2004, she was with TV producer Engelson. In 2010, they were engaged and wed the following year, to separate 2 years later. Ms. Priddy claims that her friend had put all the rules into play with Trevor. She had apparently met a fortune teller in Argentina who told her that she would marry a man with curly red hair. Engelson, of course, is not the only figure in her life to have reddish hair, so too does Prince Harry. Next week, she will have pushed the far from welcome disclosures to the back of her mind as family and friends see them marry. Her old friend Ninaki will not be there. She did not make the guest list. An individual who's either been disengaged from or left on the shelf. And of course, this article from 2018 demonstrates some of the past romantic involvements that Harry's wife has had, and is demonstrative of course, the number that she would be involved with, and the necessity of having different partners, as is often the case with a narcissist of her persuasion. It's interesting to look back at this because it's demonstrative of the people that she was involved in and how her narcissism has enabled her to trade up considerably from these individuals. But of course, as I've explained to you in the past, it will struggle to keep her in the elevated position that she has got to. Now, bearing in mind that this article was nearly 5 years ago, it's demonstrative, of course, of the way that the narcissist goes after a range of different people and then immediately looks to draw them in, consolidating the relationship. And then, of course, as I explained in the detail, that numerous of the relationships were tumultuous, something those of you that have been in a relationship with a narcissist know all about. But were people seeing what she was like back then, prior to the wedding? Well, Pete25 states, she's so unutterably, unspeakably fake and awful, she wouldn't look twice at Ginger were it not for who he is. Truitt 2, 9 days, still time to call the whole thing off. IRA Corbyn, it's fine, but stop pretending that she's some sort of middle-aged divorcee princess instead of just some been-round-the-block broad marrying a minor royal. Cloud9, waiting for the real stories to break. The firm cannot keep a lid on them forever. Fergie will be a walk in the park compared to the American bike. Jalinda, I would suggest the Ginger Tool might suggest going for a checkup. Franny, Oh dear. JRM 4pm. Ha, ha, ha. So even back then, which is some nearly 5 years ago, people were already seeing through Harry's wife as the type of individual that she was, and were not expressing particular support or favourable views, having identified disfavourable views of her. And Jalinda writes, I would suggest the ginger tool might suggest going for a checkup. Pair 80. Harry's wife has been with everyone. Harry has no class, marrying a woman who's been around the block 1,000 times like this. Smithy, as the saying goes, she's had more pricks than a dartboard. Scot-free, fake and forced, also blatantly bypassing UK immigration laws. Makes me want to have a referendum on the monarchy. On a rant, the British public would have had far more respect for this relationship if they had got married quietly in a registry office and moved to America. Instead, we are having to fund the expensive ring of steel protection and goodness knows what else in their lives for a minor spoilt prince to marry an unsuitable woman who has been married several times already, often on screen, so I really don't understand her desperation to play the role again. But this is the problem. Is she doing it just to ram the whole thing down our throats at our expense? As Anne Widdecombe said, she is unsuitable. And interestingly, as a consequence to that, somebody responds saying, I just want to say, unsuitable because you and some old woman with a grudge of people of colour say so. Pathetic. Ellie, oh, shut up about colour. The whole relationship has nothing to do with colour, and you know it. You simply don't know what else to say. You sound stupid mentioning colour. Tuneful chimes in. For the 1000th time, it's not colour. She could be a green being from the planet Mars, and tons of people would still detest her because of the facts that have come out about her character, loose morals, and use and discarding of people, dogs, etc. The race card is conveniently pulled every time to cry victim. Aina adds, it's about character, not colour. So even back then, some 5 years ago, just like I had, other people were identifying her true colours. And it's interesting to look back at this article to see the type of individuals and the nature of the relationships that Harry's wife was engaging in back then, which are clear indicators of her narcissism at work. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.